Have you ever been hurt so deeply that all you wanted to do was scream, react, or strike back? That's a natural response, but it might not be the right one. When someone wounds you, your first instinct may be to respond, maybe with words, maybe with a cold silence that punishes, maybe with distance or retaliation. That's human nature. When your heart is struck, your soul wants to strike back. But I want you to pause for a moment and consider this. Jesus was wounded, yet he remained silent. Not because he lacked power, not because he didn't have the right to defend himself, but because he was showing us a higher way, a divine response to human pain. Imagine it. He stood before men who mocked him, spat on him, whipped his back, and pressed a crown of thorns into his head. They accused him falsely, laughed at his innocence, and humiliated him. But through it all, he didn't respond. He didn't curse them. He didn't defend himself. The Bible says he opened not his mouth. That wasn't weakness. That was power. The kind of power that comes from knowing who you are and whose you are. Jesus wasn't silent because he didn't feel the pain. He felt every blow, every rejection, every betrayal. But he was anchored in his Father's purpose. He understood that the suffering wasn't the end. It was a necessary step on the path to resurrection. And I want to tell someone today, what you're going through, what they said behind your back, what they did to hurt you, it's not the end. It's a part of what God is using to shape your life. You don't need to react because your worth doesn't come from what people do to you. Your identity isn't defined by their action. It's defined by how God sees you. And when God looked at his Son on the cross, he said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." Even when the crowd chose Barabbas, even when they crucified him, God never turned away. He was always watching, and he's watching over you too. There's power in silence. Not the silence of fear, but the silence that flows from peace. Peace that says, I don't have to prove anything to anyone. Peace that whispers, God will fight my battles. Peace that holds you steady when everything inside you wants to scream, to argue, to make them feel the pain they caused you. But friend, if you live your life trying to return what others have done to you, you'll live beneath your calling. The cross was never a place of reaction. It was a place of redemption. If Jesus had reacted in anger, we would never know grace. If he had defended himself, we would never know salvation. What they meant for evil, God turned for good, and he still does. The insults you ignored, the betrayal you didn't retaliate against, the offense you chose to release, those are moments of divine strength. They don't make you weak. They make you more like him. Some of you are holding on to bitterness, not because you're evil, but because you were deeply hurt. I understand. The wound is real. But don't let the wound become your identity. Don't let the pain dictate your next move. When you react, you risk stepping out of God's perfect timing. But when you respond with silence and trust, you step into the covering of God's hand. The world tells you to clap back, speak your truth, defend your name. But heaven says, be still. Heaven says, let the Lord vindicate you. Heaven says, walk in humility and let his strength be made perfect in your weakness. So when someone hurts you, and they will, pause before you speak. Turn your heart toward the one who said nothing when they pierced his hands. Remember, silence is not surrender. It is spiritual maturity. It is trust. It is knowing that the same God who raised Jesus from the dead will raise you above every lie, every betrayal, every wound. Never forget, your silence in the face of pain may echo louder in heaven than your loudest shout ever could on earth. There's something deep inside us that flares up the moment we're struck, whether it's with cruel words, betrayal, or even cold silence. When someone hurts you, your flesh rises up quickly. It whispers in your ear, don't let them get away with this. Show them who you are. Make them regret it. That's the voice of pride. That's the voice of the flesh. And that voice, it isn't trying to protect your spirit, it's trying to protect your ego. But then there's another voice, a gentler one. It doesn't shout, it calls. It doesn't demand, it invites. That's the voice of the Spirit. You see, the flesh is loud. It craves attention. It wants revenge. It wants to make a statement. But the Spirit is patient. The Spirit says, wait, be still. Don't respond the way they did, respond the way I would. And I'll be honest, this isn't easy. It's hard to take a hit and say nothing. It's hard to be misunderstood and not defend yourself. It's hard to be falsely accused and stay at peace. But hear this, what's hard for your flesh is often holy for your spirit. The Bible says, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. That's not just advice for how to deal with people, it's spiritual wisdom for how to walk in step with God. Because when you react from raw emotion, you often create more pain than the original offense. But when you respond from the Spirit, you plant peace, even in the middle of chaos. And only the Spirit of God can give you that kind of peace. You don't have to lash out when you're rooted in the one who holds your future. You don't have to answer every insult when you know God is your defender. You don't have to retaliate when your heart rests in the promises of heaven. The world may call that weakness, but heaven calls it strength. The flesh wants to win arguments. The Spirit wants to win souls. The flesh wants to be right. The Spirit wants to be righteous. The flesh wants to hurt back, but the Spirit wants to heal forward. And that, my friend, makes all the difference. Every time someone wounds you, you're standing at a crossroads. One path leads deeper into bitterness. The other leads higher into grace. One traps you in a cycle of pain. The other sets you free to walk in love. Now, I'm not saying what they did was okay. I'm not asking you to pretend the wound isn't real. What I'm saying is this. Your response has the power to either multiply the pain or break the cycle. Sometimes your silence is your greatest strength. Sometimes walking away is the boldest testimony. And sometimes not reacting at all isn't weakness. It's choosing to let the Spirit lead. You weren't created to fight every battle that comes your way. You weren't meant to carry every offense on your shoulders. That's why Jesus said, "Take my yoke upon you, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." The more you try to handle it in your own strength, the heavier it feels. But when you surrender it to God, when you say, "Lord, I won't fight this battle in my flesh, I'll let you fight it in the Spirit," that's when chains break. Don't let your flesh write a story the Spirit is trying to redeem. Don't let one moment of rage undo the peace it took years to build. Don't let temporary emotion cause permanent damage. Because when the flesh leads, consequences follow. But when the Spirit leads, healing begins. Some of the biggest regrets in life aren't from what others did to us, but from how we responded. Words we wish we could take back. Action and we wish we never took. But I've never met someone who regretted staying calm. I've never met someone who said, "I wish I had screamed louder. I wish I had fought harder." No, the peace of God guards your heart when you allow the Spirit to guide your response. It's not about pretending it didn't hurt. It's about refusing to let the pain decide your next step. Every time you hold your tongue, every time you silently forgive, every time you choose to walk away instead of lashing out, you're not just avoiding conflict. You're becoming more like Christ. So next time someone tries to drag you into a fight, pause and breathe. The next time someone tries to stir up your anger, remember whose you are. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to respond to every attack. You don't need to meet their fire with more fire, because you carry something they don't understand. You carry the Spirit of the living God. And where the Spirit leads, peace follows. One of the hardest truths in life is learning to live with injustice. When someone hurts you and seems to walk away untouched, when you were honest and they lied, when you loved and they used you, when you gave your best and they crushed it, everything inside you cries out for justice, for resolution, for closure. You want the apology. You want them to admit the harm. You want it to be made right. But life doesn't always work like that, does it? There will be people who never say they're sorry. People who never acknowledge what they did. People who never own the damage they caused. There are people who will hurt you and smile while doing it. And if you're not careful, you'll spend your entire life waiting for justice from the wrong courtroom. You'll exhaust yourself trying to get them to understand, to see the pain they caused, to feel even a fraction of what they made you feel. But let me tell you something that can set your soul free. God sees every injustice. He is not blind, He is not silent, and He saw the tears you cried when no one else was watching. He saw the betrayal they thought they got away with. He heard every word they spoke behind your back. And while the world may turn a blind eye and people around you may overlook it, God misses nothing. He is not only the God of mercy, He is also the God of justice. And in His word, He says, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay." That's not just a comforting phrase, that is a divine principle. You were never meant to carry the weight of revenge. You were meant to lay that burden down at His feet. You don't have to fight every battle. You don't need to correct every lie. You don't need to chase after people, trying to make them see just how deeply they hurt you. Because when you trust God, He becomes your defender. He fights for you in ways you can't see. He works behind the scenes, and He knows exactly how to bring justice in His time and His way. I know that's hard to accept when you are hurting. I know it can feel like letting go means they're getting away with it. But they're not. When you release someone into God's hands, you're not excusing what they did. You're simply turning them over to a higher court. A court that sees the heart, that weighs every motive, and balances both mercy and justice perfectly. And sometimes, God deals with people quietly. Not with drama, not with public humiliation, but deeply, in ways you may never see. Just because you can't witness what He's doing doesn't mean He isn't doing it. God doesn't settle every account on our schedule, but He always settles them. You may not see the justice immediately, but you will feel the peace that comes from surrendering the situation to Him. When you try to avenge yourself, you're saying, "God, I've got this." But when you step back, stay silent, and refuse to react, you're saying, "God, I trust You more than I trust my emotions. I trust Your hand more than my anger." And that kind of trust moves heaven. So don't waste your strength trying to make them see. Use your strength to walk in freedom. Every moment you spend replaying what they did is a moment of your peace you've handed over. Don't give your joy to the ones who walked away. Don't give your peace to the ones who hurt you. Give it all to the one who never left, who never forsakes, and who always sees the truth. And if you think God doesn't care about what you've been through, look at the cross. The cross is God's eternal response to injustice. His Son, completely innocent, suffered for a world that didn't deserve him. Betrayed, denied, mocked, crucified, and yet he didn't fight back. Why? Because he trusted the Father. He knew that resurrection was coming. He knew justice wouldn't be found in man's courtroom, but in God's plan. And that same trust is available to you. You don't have to see the outcome to believe he's working. You don't have to understand the timing to rest in his faithfulness. He is your Redeemer. He is your shelter. He is the righteous judge. And in his hands, no injustice is ever ignored. No pain is ever wasted. So if someone hurt you and walked away, let them go. If someone broke your trust and never apologized, leave it in God's hands. If someone wounded your soul and never looked back, hear this: you don't need their apology to be whole. You need God's presence to be healed. And the good news? You already have it. You don't have to carry the weight anymore. Give it to God. He saw it all. He remembers it all. And he will repay. Now listen, when someone hurts you, the first thing the enemy will do is isolate you. He'll try to cut you off from love, pull you away from peace, and convince you that your pain is permanent. And in that isolation, bitterness starts to grow. It doesn't arrive loudly. It creeps in silently through the quiet of a broken heart, through the endless mental replay of the wrongs, through that secret vow, I'll never trust anyone again. That's how bitterness works. It whispers, it sneaks in, and before you even realize it, what they did to you begins to change who you are. That's the danger of bitterness. It doesn't just remember the wound, it becomes the wound. And then it starts to seep into everything. Your joy begins to fade. Your prayers feel dry. Your laughter disappears. You start expecting the worst from people because someone gave you their worst. You guard your heart so tightly that even love can't get in. But that's not healing. That's a prison. And Jesus didn't set you free so you could live behind walls of pain and self-protection. There's a lie we often believe, that holding on to the offense gives us control, that staying angry keeps us safe, that if we never forgive, we'll never be hurt again. The truth is, the longer you hold on to bitterness, the heavier your soul becomes. You weren't created to carry that kind of weight. That's why Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Not just physical rest, soul rest, heart rest. Rest from carrying pain you were never meant to hold. You can't heal by staying angry. You can't move forward while looking backward. And you can't become whole while feeding on the memory of what broke you. At some point, you have to make a decision. Do I want justice or do I want freedom? Because sometimes the justice you're demanding from someone else is costing you your own peace. Letting go doesn't mean they were right. It just means you're tired of living like a prisoner to something they don't even think about anymore. Some of you have been carrying pain for years. Deep wounds, childhood trauma, friendships that ended in betrayal, words that still echo in your mind from people who should have protected you. You've prayed, but the pain still lingers. You've tried to move on, but the past keeps pulling you back. Let me say something straight from the heart of God. He's not asking you to forget what happened. He's asking you to surrender what happened. There's a difference. Forgetting may be impossible, but surrendering, that's where the healing begins. That's where the supernatural takes over. That's where the God steps in. When you pray, God, I don't know how to let go, but I want to. I don't want to carry this pain into every relationship, every room, every season. I don't want to live through the lens of what was done to me. I want to see again. I want to feel again. I want to live again. That kind of prayer touches heaven. That kind of surrender moves the heart of God. And what he does next? He begins to soften what the world hardened. He doesn't just cut off the branches of bitterness, he pulls out the roots, because as long as the root is still alive, bitterness keeps growing back. But when the Spirit of God begins to heal you from the root, everything changes. Your smile returns, your hope is restored, your joy rises again. And not because they finally said sorry, but because you gave God the broken pieces. Bitterness makes you relive the moment they hurt you. Healing helps you remember the moment God stepped in. Bitterness keeps you chained to what they did. Healing connects you to what God is doing. Don't let the past steal the peace that's available to you right now. You don't need them to come back and fix it for God to make it new. You don't need closure from them when Christ has already opened the door to freedom. I've seen people lose decades of joy because they couldn't let go of the pain from one season. I've seen hearts grow cold, believing that staying angry made them strong. But true strength isn't found in how tightly you hold the offense. It's in how humbly you lay it down. And sometimes the most powerful thing you'll ever do isn't shouting, isn't fighting, isn't even speaking. It's lifting your hands to heaven and saying, Lord, I surrender this. Take it out of me before it takes over me. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's faith. That's the path to healing. Let it go before it builds a home in your soul. Let it go before it steals another year of your life. Let it go before it turns you into someone God never designed you to be, because you were created to be free, not just outwardly, but deep down in your soul. And that freedom begins the moment you stop rehearsing the hurt and start releasing it to God. One of the greatest mistakes we make when we're in pain is thinking that pain gives us permission to change who we are. We say, they treated me this way, I'll never be the same. And it's true. Pain changes us. But it doesn't have to change us into someone we were never meant to be. Pain doesn't have to make you cold. It doesn't have to make you bitter. It doesn't have to harden your heart. If you're not careful, hurt will start shaping your identity instead of deepening your faith. And that's exactly what the enemy wants. He wants to take your gentleness. He wants to shut down your love for people. He wants you to close your heart, retreat inward, and start living from your wounds instead of your calling. Because if he can't destroy your destiny, he'll try to distort your character. If he can get you to respond to pain with pride, with anger, or with numbness, then he's taken something even more valuable than your peace. He's taken your likeness to Christ. But listen to me, don't let what they did make you forget who you are. Don't let betrayal make you bitter. Don't let lies turn you into a liar. Don't let cruelty turn you cold and calculating. Stay soft. Stay kind. Stay rooted in love. Not because of them, but in spite of them. Your true strength isn't proven when people are kind to you. It's proven when they're not, and you still rise in love. Jesus was not only betrayed by one of his own, but denied by his closest friend, abandoned by those who promised to stay, falsely accused, mocked, and crucified, all while being completely innocent. And yet, in the middle of brutal injustice, Jesus didn't let it poison his spirit. When they mocked him, he stayed silent. When they beat him, he didn't fight back. And when they nailed him to the cross, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." That wasn't weakness. That was victory. That was power. That was love. Love refusing to die. That's your example. That's the standard. To love even when it hurts. To bless those who curse you. To pray for those who use you. Not because they deserve it, but because you are called to live from a different kingdom. Because your peace doesn't depend on how others treat you. It comes from the one who lives inside you. So when someone hurts you, your first instinct might be to pull away, lash out, or protect yourself by changing who you are. But pause. Breathe. Remember, your identity is not rooted in pain. It's rooted in Christ. You are not what they said. You are not what they did. You are not their betrayal. You are not their rejection. You are loved. You are chosen. You are called. You are healed. You are whole. Don't step out of your anointing just to match their behavior. You don't fight darkness by becoming dark. You fight it by shining brighter. And every time you choose love over revenge, compassion over criticism, peace over retaliation, you are becoming more like him. That's how you win. That's how heaven wins. Let me tell you something. There's a kind of strength the world will never understand. It's not loud. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't scream or argue or seek revenge. It's a quiet strength, a holy strength, a strength that comes from knowing who you are in God. When you walk in that strength, you don't need to prove yourself. You don't need to defend your worth. You don't have to answer every insult or correct every lie, because you know who holds your future. You know who vindicates. You know who restores. Yes, there will be moments when the pain feels like it's changing you. But don't let it twist your spirit. Let it deepen your compassion. Let it teach you to see people through the eyes of grace. Let it remind you how much you need God's mercy, so you can offer that same mercy to others. This doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. It doesn't mean you ignore boundaries or pretend everything is okay. But it does mean you choose not to become what hurt you. You set the boundary, but you still bless. You walk away, but you still forgive. You learn the lesson, but you don't let the lesson steal your light. Because when it's all said and done, it won't be the pain that defines you. It will be your response to that pain. It won't be what they did. It will be what you chose to do afterward. And if you choose to stay true to who you are in God, if you choose to love, to forgive, to keep your spirit clean, then nothing they've done can stop the blessing that's coming your way. They don't want reconciliation. They want chaos. They want a reaction. They want to stir you up just to feel in control again. But when you stay silent, you take the wind out of their storm. You remain unmoved. You refuse to let your emotions be controlled by someone else's dysfunction. That is spiritual maturity. That is a heart anchored in God. Now I know what you may be thinking. But isn't silence passive? Doesn't that mean they win? No, friend. Silence isn't passive when it's prayerful. It's not defeat when it's done in trust. You're not letting them win, you're letting God work, because He sees what was done in the dark. He hears every conversation you weren't invited to. He knows the truth that hasn't been told, and His justice is never late. In the meantime, your silence can become sacred. It can be the space where you and God sit together in stillness, where He whispers healing to your heart, where He strengthens your identity. Because when the noise of the world fades, His voice becomes clearer. And when you stop reacting to people, you start responding to Him. That's where peace is found. A peace that surpasses understanding. A peace the world didn't give and the world can't take away. But you have to choose it. You have to turn down the volume of offense, turn down the urge to clap back, turn down the desire to be right, and turn up the voice of God that says, "You are mine. I've got this. Just trust me." So next time someone hurts you, deeply, unfairly, maybe even repeatedly, pause, breathe, choose silence. Not because you don't have something to say, but because what you don't say can speak louder than anything you ever could. Your silence, when surrendered to God, becomes a shield that protects your peace and a signal to heaven that your trust isn't in people. It's in Him. Because sometimes the loudest victory comes through the quietest restraint. Don't let the hurt harden you. Let it refine you. Let it pull you deeper into the arms of God. Let it shape you into someone more loving, not less. Because in the end, victory doesn't belong to the one who hit the hardest. It belongs to the one who refused to lose their heart. There's a moment in every deep hurt where silence becomes more powerful than any word you could say. When someone wounds you, when they lie, when they betray, when they insult, when they take something sacred and trample it, you may feel a fire rise in your bones. You may feel every part of you screaming for justice, for defense, for the last word. But that's the moment you must remember. Silence can be a weapon of wisdom. Silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is the sound of trusting God more than you trust your own voice. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to explain your worth to people who've already chosen not to see it. You don't have to prove your side to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. There is strength in choosing stillness when everything in you wants to react. There is holiness in saying nothing, not because you're afraid, but because your confidence is anchored in heaven, not in human approval. Scripture tells us, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. That's not just poetic, that's a command. Because the natural response when we're attacked is to fight back, to defend, to justify. But God says, let me fight for you. Let me handle what you cannot. And when you stand still, when you stay silent, when you resist the urge to retaliate, you are showing heaven that you trust the one who sees all, hears all, and judges all with righteousness. When Jesus was falsely accused, when he stood before Pilate and the crowd cried out for his crucifixion, he didn't shout. He didn't plead his case. He didn't expose his betrayers. He stood in silence. And in that silence was the power of submission, not to men, but to God's purpose. Because Jesus knew his destiny didn't depend on the opinion of man. Your future was never in their hands. It depends on the will of the Father, and the same is true for you today. When someone hurts you, your worth is not up for debate. Your destiny is not hanging in the balance of their opinion, their actions, or their words. So don't waste your energy trying to fix what only God can heal. Don't pour your heart into a battle that was never yours to fight. Be silent, not because you're weak or defeated, but because you know exactly who holds the final say. Sometimes, the most powerful way to protect your peace is to say nothing at all, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. Because the more we speak in anger, the more we risk saying something that doesn't reflect our heart, or worse, something that feeds our enemy's satisfaction. When you stay quiet, you strip the enemy of access to your peace. You give him no reaction, no foothold, no opportunity to twist your words. You guard your spirit by refusing to let rage lead your mouth. And let's be real. Some people don't want healing. They don't want truth.